History has been made in the United States. Ketanji Brown Jackson becomes the first Black woman to be confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. The 51-year-old federal appellate judge was nominated by President Joe Biden, who hailed her appointment as a historic day for America. But most Republicans did not vote to confirm her.
The yeas are 53, the nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed.
After a 233-year wait, a Black woman will soon sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. Ketanji Brown Jackson watched herself enter the history books from the White House alongside President Joe Biden, who hailed her confirmation as a historic moment for the U.S. Just 3 Republican senators voted with the Democrats to confirm Brown Jackson as only the 3rd Black person and 6th woman to serve on the U.S.'s highest court. The vote concluded a bitterly partisan approval process that saw Brown Jackson grilled by Republican senators on hot-button issues like race relations and abortion, as well as her record as a judge. Senate Democrats were overjoyed by the result.
It is just an amazing day. If I had to think of an adjective to describe all of us, it would be elated. Elated because of this wonderful person going on the court. This has been a long, hard road as we try to get to greater equality, less bigotry in America. And there is often steps backward. But when you have a day like this, it inspires you to keep moving forward.
Brown Jackson is set to replace Stephen Breyer when he retires at the end of the court's current term. But with the Conservatives set to maintain their 6-3 majority, she may find it difficult to make much impact on the increasingly right-wing court.
Our next guest is Michele Goodwin. She's a law professor and an executive committee member of the ACLU. She joins us now from Irvine, California. Ms. Goodwin, thank you for being with us on the day. In the history of the United States, Judge Jackson is now the 116th person to ascend to the Supreme Court and the first Black woman. What went through your mind as Vice President Kamala Harris confirmed that vote yesterday?
This is history in the making, and it's a day to celebrate, but it's also was a day to reflect. There have only been 5 women to serve on the United States Supreme Court, and that deserves deep reflection of what that court's history has been and the history of blocking women quite literally from becoming even lawyers, and legislation upheld by the Supreme Court that would block women from becoming lawyers, such that the path would be, in fact, such a hard road, and that in 233 years, we've had only 5 women to serve on this august body, and only 2 Black people to serve on this body, and she will be the 3rd. And so while it represents a moment to celebrate the grand accomplishments, the sterling meritorious record of Judge Jackson, we also have some very serious reflection and work to do in the United States, not only based on what we saw during the Senate Judiciary confirmation hearings, which were appalling, but also what this represents in terms of our history and the road to go to forge greater equality.
You mentioned her stellar record, her credentials, her experience, 2 degrees from Harvard, graduated with honors, a former public defender. I don't even have time to go through this list in this conversation. But as you mentioned, during the Senate confirmation hearings, she was repeatedly questioned by some Republicans in a way that Black women are often questioned despite their very clear accomplishments. What struck you as you watched this process unfold?
It was a spectacle. And again, if we pay attention to history, it's a spectacle that has its very origins in the very beginnings of U.S. history and slavery and through Jim Crow, that when senators could no longer ping her on merit, let's be clear, when President Biden said that he would nominate a Black woman to the United States Supreme Court, there were social media messages and interviews that it would be a lesser person, lesser than, that this would be a person who wouldn't be able to distinguish between a fashion catalog and a legal casebook, all of that really excoriating, scurrilous frivolous kinds of attacks, not even knowing who he would nominate. And then she turns out to have this record, a record that is so exceptional that it exceeds that of the people who currently sit on the court when they were first nominated. And that says a lot about how the expectations for Black women must be that you must be actually more qualified and overqualified for some of these positions, and yet be regarded and treated with such indignity and disdain. And part of that was just really heartbreaking, I think, not only for Black women to see, but I think that Americans were really repulsed by that, such that she came away out of those hearings where she was graceful and poised and dignified and so incredibly smart in how she answered questions that Americans now rate her as the most favored judicial candidate in more than a generation. And I think that it was a reflection not only in terms of how she carried herself during the hearings, but it was also a reflection of just the very awful treatment that she experienced by some Republican members of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
And there were only 3 Republicans who voted to confirm her. We speak often of a divided America, particularly in recent years. What does this vote tell us about that division in your country?
This vote tells us that the Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party of Reagan, of Bush, or of any president before. This is a Tea Party type of Republican Party, and one can see that in just the ideology of where the Republican Party is going. If you think about an issue such as reproductive rights, which is an issue that's under attack now, Roe v. Wade was a 7-2 opinion. 5 of those justices of the 7 were Republican appointed. Justice Blackmun, who wrote the opinion in Roe v. Wade, was put on the court by Richard Nixon, a card-carrying member who was Republican. And so you see the ideologies and principles and values of the party actually changing. And we see now it's less of a Reagan party and it is more of a Jesse Helms party. And Jesse Helms, his record speaks for itself.
With Justice Jackson, to be Justice Jackson, on the bench now, it is still a conservative majority. There's a lot of concern in the United States now about Roe versus Wade, which you just brought up. How likely is it that the Supreme Court will overturn Roe versus Wade in the coming months?
Well, we don't know exactly, but many people are quite worried, as they should be. So in Texas, there is a law that's been allowed to go into effect. It's a ban on abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy, a time in which most people won't know that they're pregnant. It makes no exceptions for cases of rape or incest. And again, this is a kind of legislation that 10 years ago one would never have seen, 15 years ago never would have seen. But this is part and parcel of what we see coming out of states that are Republican dominant. Now, on this court, it's a supermajority Republican appointed court that in the past would have meant nothing. But these are justices that have articulated personally and also from the bench that they would like to see Roe v. Wade overturned, some of them. And so this is a possibility now, but it is also a possibility that it may just simply be a death by 1,000 strikes.
Michele Goodwin, a law professor in the United States, thank you very much.
Thank you.